Hello, Duke fans, and welcome to episode 162 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. It is Monday evening, June 24th, 2019. We haven't spoken with you in a little over a month, so it's nice to be back. I'm Sam Klein, of course. I am coming to you for the second time from Seattle, Washington, way up in the Pacific Northwest. I am joined, as usual, by Jason Evans in Atlanta, who just celebrated his anniversary this weekend. Right, Jason?
I did. It was a delightful time. My wife and I have been married for 28 years. Wrap your head around that.
Wow. For reference, I was born 30 years ago. So.
You could almost be my child, almost.
Well, we won't get into that.
That's terrifying.
We are usually joined by our friend Donald Wine in Washington, D.C., but Donald is overseas. Actually, I think we have some audio of Donald, so he is going to tell you where he is.
Jason, Sam, how's it going, guys? I am here in Paris, France for the Women's World Cup. I've been here for 2 weeks, and I will be in France for another 2.5 all the way through the final, which is in Lyon on July 7th. Hopefully the women's national team will be there. I am here to follow the team around all the way through the tournament, so that is why I am coming to you in pre-recorded form. I am 6 hours ahead of Jason, who's on the East Coast, and when Sam is in Seattle, I'm 9 hours ahead of him. So that means that we can't really record because it'll be at a time where one of us is going to be in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m. So I'm glad we were able to do this, and I'm sorry I can't be on there live with you while you guys record, but I'm happy to answer all the questions about the NBA draft. I can't wait to talk about it.
All right. So Donald is, as you guys heard, Donald's in France it seems like he's been there for a long time. So he recorded, just for everybody's clarity, we're doing the show on Monday night. Donald recorded his answers on what was Saturday morning French time, so Friday evening in the United States. That's right. Perhaps over a croissant. Whatever it is. All right, we are treading into uncomfortable territory here.
Yes.
So what we're gonna do here is I queued up a bunch of questions to Donald a few days ago that he could answer. And so what we're going to do is let Donald roll with the answers that he has pre-recorded, and we will go ahead and react to them and give our own take. So we will get all into the draft coverage of the draft last week. But before we do that,
we're all about the draft. We're all about the draft.
Today is going to be all draft. But first, of course, we have to thank our sponsors as usual. It is Bird Campbell. It has been Bird Campbell for a long time. Bird Campbell is the law firm run by Duke alums that operates in Texas and Florida. So for any of your business legal needs, contact Bird Campbell at BYRDCAMPBELL.com. Bird Campbell means business. So we will jump right in. And I didn't want to start with Zion Williamson because, of course, everyone knows that Zion Williamson was going to go number 1 to the Pelicans. It wasn't exciting. I think by the time the draft rolled around,
Zion went number 1. I'm shocked.
Do we have to? I know that normally we recap the news. So why don't we? Or sure, let's do that. Zion Williamson went number 1 to the Pelicans. I think everyone knows. RJ Barrett went number 3 to the Knicks. I think there was a little bit of talk leading up to the draft about RJ Barrett going. The Grizzlies were probably taking John Morant. RJ Barrett was probably going to the Knicks at number 3, but it wasn't 100% locked in. But RJ Barrett made some comments about how he only wanted to work out for the Knicks. So
right, he was all about the Knicks. There was all this disinformation out there, all this sneakiness by NBA teams, where there was this talk that the Knicks might be interested in the point guard Darius Garland more than RJ Barrett. It turned out to be a smokescreen.
And there was a bit of time there where during that smokescreen, it seemed like there was a chance that RJ Barrett and Zion Williamson could be teammates in New Orleans, but that didn't end up panning out. The Pelicans traded their draft pick, or the Pelicans got a draft pick for Anthony Davis, right?
From the Lakers, and then they dealt it to the Hawks.
And then they dealt it to the Hawks.
The Hawks paid them a king's ransom for that draft pick, but the Hawks had a king's ransom worth of assets to trade, so it's not a big deal.
And that leads us to Duke's third draft pick of the night, which was Cam Reddish at number 10 going to the Hawks, which I think may have been a little lower than was projected, although we'll get into that, of course. And then after the draft wrapped up, Marquise Bolden, who I don't think the last time we talked, we had officially known that Marquise Bolden was staying in the draft. And we knew that Javin DeLaurier was coming back, but Bolden was still working out for teams. He ultimately decided to stay in. We can talk a bit about if that made the most sense for him, but he ends up on an undrafted free agent contract with the Cleveland Cavaliers, so he'll be playing for them in summer league, and we'll wrap that up as well. But I do want to start actually with RJ Barrett. We'll come back to Zion Williamson. I want to come back to start with RJ Barrett because I think that he is the Duke player in this draft that has sort of the most has the most like different versions of his future that I think could play out. So I wanted to ask Donald first, what did you think about RJ Barrett really wanting all out for the Knicks and being so excited about being in New York? And again, just to remind the listeners, all these answers from Donald have been pre-recorded, so we don't get to interrupt him, and he doesn't get to interrupt us, at least on this episode. So Donald from France 3 days ago, take it away with your RJ Barrett analysis.
So RJ Barrett going to the Knicks is an interesting scenario because the Knicks organization is just awful. The ownership is terrible. The front office has traditionally been bad, and free agents just don't want to go there. And for it being the biggest city, the number one TV market, and a chance to be a bona fide star in the entire country, not just New York City, people are not going there anyway. And now with the Nets coming up and emerging as kind of a contender, people don't have to go to the Knicks to be in New York City. They can go to Brooklyn. And so when RJ decided he was going all in to become a Knick, I think that was an interesting combination because he likes that. It tells me he wants to embrace that bright lights in big city and embrace the challenge of turning around one of the NBA's premier franchises, or supposed to be, because they're in New York City, in the Knicks. He wants to turn that team around, and he wants to bring them and make them a winner again. And if he can do that, he'll be loved for life in America, in New York City especially, because the Knicks are, still very important to the league. The success of the Knicks is very important to the league. That's why they're in Christmas every year. That's why they're one of the, on national TV all the time, even when they're bad. So if he can turn that team around and he can succeed in that organization, which I think he can, then he is really setting himself up for a lifetime of opportunities, because the Knicks fan base will thank him if he can turn them around. They were excited to have him. I think he's excited to be there, and we'll see what he can do in Madison Square Garden. But there's nothing like, being part of that organization and succeeding. No one has done it in a long time. If RJ can make that happen, RJ is going to be a Hall of Famer.
So I can't believe that Donald went out there enough to say RJ is going to be a Hall of Famer. I mean, that's big. Like, usually when you're talking about a guy, if you're really high on him, you're like, this dude's going to be an all-star someday. Hall of Famer. That was Donald's. If RJ can turn around the Knicks, he's a Hall of Famer. And you know what, Sam, I don't disagree with Donald's take. If the Knicks get to be good, and RJ Barrett is a major reason why, he will probably someday be a Hall of Famer, because that organization is so much in the toilet. They are so messed up. But I like Donald said, I love the fact that RJ is embracing the challenge of turning the Knicks around. And I think one of the nice things for RJ is there are a lot of situations where he could have gone where I'm not sure he would have gotten to be the alpha male on day one, where he would have had to, sort of suppress himself a little bit to other players who are more experienced. I'm going to go out there with a prediction right now that RJ Barrett will be the NBA Rookie of the Year, because when people pick Rookie of the Year, lots of time they look at scoring, and RJ Barrett is going to get a lot of chances on this horrible Knicks team. He's going to get a lot of chances to score. Even though the Knicks may sign some good free agents, I still think RJ is going to get a ton of chances to score. And I think RJ is a stud scorer, and I think he's going to be Rookie of the Year because he's going to I won't be surprised if RJ averages 18, maybe 20 points a game this year for the Knicks.
I think that I mentioned earlier that I think that the Barrett selection is the most interesting, and the reason that I wanted to start with it is because of that. There is a world, I think it's the world that Donald is potentially living in, where RJ Barrett turns into a star. He brings the Knicks back to glory. The Knicks haven't really been relevant at all since the mid 90s when they had Patrick Ewing on the team. They haven't won an NBA championship in my lifetime. I don't know if they've won an NBA championship in Jason's lifetime. And
Willis Reed was like in the early 70s. I was barely alive. I don't recall watching it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So we have that as a reference. And so it's been a long time. I think that the Knicks obviously get a lot of attention for being in New York and playing in Madison Square Garden and having Spike Lee around. All of that is working in their favor. But of course, there are numerous institutional challenges that start right at the top with the Knicks. And I think that for most players, it's a death sentence to end up in New York on the Knicks because of the way that the organization is set up. However, RJ Barrett comes in not only with an immense basketball skill set, which some guy, he has more basketball skills than most guys who come through the draft, which is why he went all the way up at number 3. But he also comes with a bit of a pedigree. He has Steve Nash sort of in his entourage, if you will. Steve Nash, of course, is his godfather. He's his father's best friend. And I think having that basketball institution around RJ Barrett gives him a leg up that most players can't get. And he's going to have knowledge about how to train and how to prepare and how to maintain himself during that rookie season that is so grueling. I can imagine that for players who don't have that kind of support, going to an organization like the Knicks that is not well run and that is not sort of on top of player development is a challenge. But for RJ, it could actually be okay because he has that support system already in place. That being said, the supporting cast is going to be a huge question mark. Whether the Knicks can sign worthwhile players to put around RJ Barrett and the sort of limited cast that they already have is a big part of whether or not he's going to succeed. Jason, I don't know if I agree with your take, because I think that to be rookie of the year nowadays, I think with the media being much more inclined towards analytics and understanding sort of all the things that go into putting together a winning team, scoring I don't think is the only thing that is in it. Certainly it's a big deal.
You're saying if he's a low efficiency scorer that they'll discount it. It's possible.
It's possible.
I think it is possible. I think this is going to be not a great rookie class other than the top few guys. I mean, that's not a hot take. A lot of people have said that this is a fairly weak draft. And so I think that's why I think RJ's scoring will carry the day. That said, it's entirely possible that Zion Williamson will be the greatest thing since sliced bread, because he sure looked that way for the past 9 months or so, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think that's the part that I think is most egregious about the way you answered the question, because Zion Williamson still exists and he's going to be in New Orleans and he's playing with a better supporting cast than RJ Barrett has. Zion Williamson, I think if we're really looking at projections, is probably making the playoffs. We'll get to him in a second, but I am most curious to see.
Can we edit what I said? I want to edit that out.
No. Even though
RJ will be the second place rookie of the year.
Look, and don't discount Ja Morant. Ja Morant is going to probably be awesome in Memphis, and I think that the biggest buzz about the draft so far is Ja Morant, and how hyped the Memphis Grizzlies are for the way that they have rebuilt their team so quickly, right?
Yeah, well, the talk really should be about the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, Memphis feels like they had a good draft, and good for them. And I know they feel like they remade their team, but the team that really got remade, the team that really got rebuilt, is the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, not just Zion Williamson, but the assets that they got from the Los Angeles Lakers is unbelievable. There are trades over the course of time that you look back on, like if you're an NFL fan, the Herschel Walker trade that the Dallas Cowboys made. I'm trying to think. There are a few others. There are these trades. You're in the NBA when the Brooklyn Nets, at the time I think they were the New Jersey Nets, traded with the Boston Celtics to get Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. When they made that trade, when you look back on it, you go, oh my gosh, look at all the assets. Look at everything that was given back by the team that got the star player. I think that this Lakers-Pelicans trade may be the same kind of thing where we look back on it, we go, wow. I mean, the Lakers have given the Pelicans control of the NBA draft for like the next 5 years. And then the Pelicans turned around and they took the Lakers pick. They traded to the Hawks, and the Hawks gave the Pelicans even more assets. So, wow. I mean, the Pelicans are set up in great, great shape. Can I take half a second? And we were talking about the Knicks a minute ago, and I never got to jump in and say this. I looked this up. Are you ready for something? Can we rip on the Knicks for a minute? Is that, am I allowed to?
Yes.
You're in charge. Can I rip on the Knicks?
This podcast approves of ripping on the Knicks.
Okay, so we're going to go back to the year 2000. Back in the year 2000, since then, from then till now, you probably can't even remember stuff before 2000 or just barely. The Knicks have made the playoffs a grand total of 5 times.
I remember. Hang on. I remember Patrick Ewing being in the NBA. Like, he was awesome. I know that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, so since 2000, the Knicks have made the playoffs 5 times in 18 years. They have only advanced out of the first round once in those 5 times. They made the conference semifinals in 2013, and then they promptly lost. I want to read to you a list of names. These are all the coaches of the Knicks since 2000. This is really funny.
Do we have time? Do we have time for this? I feel like we try to keep these podcasts kind of tight.
All right, here we go. The list of New York Knicks head coaches since the year 2000. Jeff Van Gundy, Don Chaney, Herb Williams, Lenny Wilkens, Herb Williams again, Larry Brown, Isaiah Thomas, Mike D'Antoni, Mike Woodson, Derek Fisher, Kurt Rambis, Jeff Hornacek, and then David Fizdale. That's a lot of coaches for 18 years. That's like 12 guys. It's insane.
Yeah, and who's to say that anything is going to get better for the Knicks organization, despite having, you know, a phenomenal draft pick in RJ Barrett.
You know who's to say? RJ Barrett is who's to say.
That is true. Barrett, you know what?
If anyone has to say so in it, it is RJ Barrett.
All right, I want to transition to talk. I'm going to keep going down the list before coming back to Zion.
Yes.
Before Jason, of course, before I get your take on your hometown Hawks,
my take
taking on them taking Cam Reddish, I wanted to get Donald's take. Donald, before we hear what Jason has to say, what do you think about Cam Reddish? He maybe dropped a little bit from where some analysts had him projected, sort of in the 6, 7, 8 kind of range. He falls down to 10. What do you think about Cam Reddish and what sort of the projections look like for him?
Well, as we discussed a couple weeks ago on the last podcast, I think Cam Reddish to the Atlanta Hawks is a very good pick for the Hawks. I think that we've talked about him pairing with Trae Young. If he can get his shot under him and really improve it, that he could become a scoring option without having to be the man in Atlanta. And they have a really young core that is going to be one to deal with and contend with in the East in the next few years, and he can be a part of that. It was interesting to me that he fell to 10 because I know that the Hawks had drafted Jackson Hayes at 8, and we talked about how he wouldn't fall past the Wizards at 9. In that way, the Hawks would pick him at 8. But when they got Rui from Gonzaga, the Wizards did, then he was still available at 10, and I think that was an interesting play because it tells me that the Hawks knew that Cam Reddish would be there at 10, and they didn't have to waste an 8 pick, especially one that's going to the Pelicans, to get him. So he might be a polarizing player for a lot of people, but I think, you know, if he can get his shot under him, he's going to be a great player in the NBA, and I think he has the range to shoot from 3. So when he can get that going and he can improve that, all he has to do now is work on the shot. He doesn't have to go to class. He doesn't do anything else. He doesn't have to worry about any responsibilities other than getting better from behind the arc. And if he can do that, the Atlanta Hawks probably got one of the steals of the draft.
So Donald, I think, is a little bit higher on Cam Reddish than the average pundit is. I am curious about the Cam Reddish situation because on the one hand, he showed flashes of brilliance this year at Duke. On the other hand, the stats were not great on his efficiency and on his fouling and some of the indicators that you think would be easier for him to pick up in college. But I really want to hear Jason's take on it because, of course, Jason is the Hawks fan here, and his happiness is most directly related to Cam Reddish's success in the NBA. So, Jason, what do you think about Donald's optimism for Cam Reddish on the Hawks?
Well, Donald is right about one thing. I mean, he talked about Cam needs to work on his shooting. You cannot succeed at the type of game that Cam Reddish plays unless you bury three-pointers. Period. End of story. We need have no more discussion of it. He must be able to hit outside shots to be an effective NBA player. That said, I like his form on his outside shot. He certainly showed, some streakiness. So he showed at times he's capable of it. He is so long and he gets off the shot so effortlessly that I feel like, the elements are there for him to be a good NBA shooter. And I mentioned earlier that I do not think this is a great draft. I'm not alone in saying that. So the Hawks picking number 10, I was looking around. There weren't a lot of other guys that I was like, oh my God, please get him. Please get him. I was thrilled that Cam was still there at number 10. I think that Cam has a chance to become a 3-and-D player in the NBA. Donald talked about his shooting. I want to talk about Cam's defense. That was the thing he did best for Duke this year. Cam was most effective as a defender, using his long arms, using his quickness and his anticipation to get into passing lanes, to disrupt guys who are dribbling the ball or trying to make passes and the such. And so I think Cam potentially can be a 3-and-D guy for the Hawks. And those are really valuable. I mean, we see that in the NBA Finals every year. Teams that advance far in the playoffs have these guys who stand in the corner and they bury three-pointers, and at the other end of the floor, they D up the best guy on the opposition, and they D him up really darn well. And it's a huge part of success in the NBA. And I think that could be Cam's role with the Atlanta Hawks. And you know what? If it doesn't work out for him, I will be sad because I want him to be really good and I want the Hawks to be really good. But I just think we're going to look back on this draft. There are not going to be many all-stars out of this draft. And if the Hawks took a shot at number 10 on a guy who could be a really good 3-and-D player, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't work out.
All right, I'll give you I'll let you play a game here because there's a Duke player that I am thinking of when it comes to trying to project Cam Reddish early in the league, and that's Luke Kennard. Because Luke Kennard also, he was at Duke for 2 years, but he came out with a scouting report that was, notionally scorer, but still questions about his shot. He's not exactly the same player. He's not as long as Cam Reddish. Luke Kennard, I think, had more of an interesting mid-range game when he was at Duke than Cam did. Cam certainly has a better reputation as a defender. But so far in Luke Kennard's 2 seasons in the NBA, he's averaged 7.6 points per game and 9.7 points per game. And in his first 2 seasons, he shot just over 40% from 3. So, and it all comes out to he's averaged 8.6 points per game. Do you think, Jason, that Cam Reddish is going to score more than Luke Kennard and have a better 3-point percentage? So those were 8.6 points a game and 40% from 3.
We're talking through his first 2 seasons?
Through his first 2 seasons.
Okay, so I don't know that he will quite get to that 3-point percentage, but I think he may get around 8 points per game over the course of his first couple seasons. And I'm glad you brought up Luke Kennard because folks who listen faithfully to this podcast will know that I have compared Cam's shooting woes to Luke Kennard's freshman season. I don't know if folks remember this because Luke was so great as a sophomore. Luke's 3-point percentage was awful. He was awful as a freshman at Duke. And at the time I said, this is inexplicable. This guy has too good a looking of a stroke. He had too good a reputation as a shooter. I think that, this is just one bad year. And I wonder if maybe we saw the same thing from Cam Reddish, a guy who came in with a great reputation as a shooter, a guy who looks like he should be able to fill it up. He has a terrible year. Maybe like Luke Kennard, he just had an off season. It seems crazy to go, he was just off for 38 games. But maybe that's what was going on, and maybe he will show what he really is now that he's in the NBA. As a Hawks fan, I'd be thrilled.
I think that's one of the underrated things about projecting these players who come out early after just 1 year of college, or perhaps even 2, is that you may actually get stuck in a small sample or something that's just above a small sample when you're trying to project how they're going to be in the league. And that is one of the reasons that NBA teams stopped wanting to have high school players enter directly into the draft, because they didn't feel like they were getting enough data on them against high quality competition to say, yeah, this guy actually is a good shooter. Because we don't know at this point if Cam Reddish is a guy with a good shot who just happened to miss a bunch of shots this year, or if he doesn't really see the rim, or if he has some other problem in his game. And the Hawks will find out. I do want to get, of course, to Zion Williamson. And the way that I teed up the question to Donald is, how many All-Star games do you think Zion Williamson is going to make in his hopefully long NBA career? And Donald, I think, has the reputation on this show of being the eternal optimist. So this answer will not surprise you.
So Zion Williamson being in the Western Conference presents a weird combination, because there's a lot of guys in the Western Conference that could get voted into the All-Star game, but call me crazy, I think he's going to be one of them in year one. And I think because of his star quality, the number of people who just adore him, even before high school, before college, and even at Duke, I think he's going to be one of those guys that we see playing in an All-Star game well over 10 times. I mean, the record is 19. It's held by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The most actively is LeBron James with 15. He's been to every All-Star game, or been selected every All-Star game since he joined the league. I think we're looking at that for Zion Williamson. I think the question is, how many years will he play in the NBA? My guess is 15. I think that's the number that we're looking at. He's going to get invited just about every single year that he's in the league, but I think in the end, All-Star games number, I think we're going to set it at 15. He could go a little bit higher. I just don't know if he's going to play until he's 40, like some guys do to get to that high number. If he plays that, then he might set a record, but I think the sweet spot right now is 15.
Okay.
15!
Yeah.
15!
I want to make a call back.
Wow. On the one hand, that's a lot. On the other hand, if he's right, if Zion's good, people love him. He's so magnetic that, maybe 15 is low. Donald said he thinks Zion's going to retire in 15 years, and I think that's crazy. He's just 19. He's not going to retire at 34. It just doesn't happen.
For guys who are shaped like Zion Williamson, generally they don't last until they're 40. The guys who last until they're 40 are the Jerry Stackhouses of the world, right?
Wait a second. Hold on. LeBron is not shaped entirely differently from Zion Williamson.
LeBron's lost a lot of weight, though. You look at LeBron now; he's slimmed down a fair amount, and I bet he's looking at that and thinking that he needed to do that to be able to prolong his career. So,
but
ask me again.
You cannot project what Zion's body will look like in 10 or 12 or 15 years.
Jason, we are guys that talk about sports on the internet. We can say whatever we want.
We can project anything.
We can project anything. No one's here to
fire
us.
So what's your answer? How many All-Star games does Zion make?
I'm going to go with 9. I feel like I want to hedge between Zion. I don't think he's going to be a bust. He's going to make at least a few All-Star games. I don't know if he is going to hold up in the NBA playing his game and with his body for 20 years, which is what it takes to get to 15 All-Star games, unless you are LeBron. And, will he make the All-Star game this year? Probably. I think he will probably make the All-Star game his rookie year, because he's so electric and everybody loves him, and he'll probably be good right off the bat. But he has to maintain that. And there have been scores of players who have been really, really impressive and then have gotten injured or fallen off for whatever reason. Think about how electric Derrick Rose was, when he won his MVP right in the middle of the LeBron era. And everyone was like, "Oh, Derrick Rose, here he comes!" And then he hurt his knee, and he's never been the same player. I'm not saying that Derrick Rose was as good as Zion. It hopefully will be, but Derrick Rose was amazing. Plenty of guys have been amazing, and then just had stuff happen to them. So I don't know if it's 15. I'm going to go with 9 All-Star games for Zion. What do you think?
I feel like I don't understand your projection, because it feels to me like you're projecting an injury. And I think that's impossible to know, and relatively unlikely. It's not like everybody in the NBA gets injured at some point in their career. 9 doesn't make sense to me. To me, he's either a good player who occasionally makes an all-star game, which means 3, 4, 5, or he's great and he makes 15, 18, something like that. You ready? I laughed at the 15. I'm going to go 17.
What?
Because yes. I agree with you. I think he'll make it this year, and I think he's going to be one of those guys. He's not just going to be good. Zion Williamson's going to be great, and if you're great, you make it every single year. And he's going to. He's going to. And the reason I'm saying 17 and not like 20, because I think he'll play in the league for probably 18, 19 years, is that there will be some years where he'll miss because something weird happens and he gets injured at the wrong time or something like that, and or even that he sort of takes an all-star game off, or who knows what, or at the very end of the career. But I laughed at Donald, and then I one-upped him. That's me.
All right, new eternal optimist Jason Evans here on the Duke Basketball Report. So that's it.
So
yeah,
you
what?
My lesson is, you don't make money betting against the accomplishments of Zion Williamson.
Okay, that's your gambling advice for the month. So take that. That and $7 can get you a cup of coffee in Seattle, is what I've learned. It's what I've learned the last month and a half.
Okay, so I love it.
I do want to transition now and kind of look a little bit more broadly at the draft. We have gone over Duke's top draft picks. We'll come back and talk about Marquise Bolden here at the end, but I want to kind of look more broadly at at how things kind of shaped out for the rest of the league, and see if you had any thoughts about maybe players who were steals here. I know that, Jason, you said that the chatter around this draft is that after the top couple of picks, it doesn't feel like there was a lot of value to be had out there. But so I put this question to Donald, and again, we'll go to him first because he is the recorded one, about who is a player that you think was a steal from this draft, and perhaps who's a player that you think was a reach. So I'll let Donald take it away from there.
For me, and you're probably going to call me a homer for this, but the steal of the first round was my Detroit Pistons selecting Sekou Doumbouya 15th. I thought he was going to be someone who could have been drafted in that 7, 8, 9 range in the NBA draft. When he dropped to 11, and then I said, I think the Phoenix Suns would probably just grab him, especially with that pick the trade they just made with the Timberwolves. But when they drafted Cameron Johnson, I knew that he was going to fall all the way to 15, and that the Pistons wouldn't hesitate in taking him. So I think that was the steal of the draft. Now for reaches, I'm looking, and there's really not a lot of reaches, but I would say probably the Cavaliers drafting Darius Garland, especially when they were trying to move up to like 2 or 3 to try and grab some people. But I think they could have probably traded back and gotten somebody to trade up to take somebody like Jarrett Culver or Kobe White before the Suns and Bulls drafted. And maybe, just maybe, they could have gotten Darius Garland a little bit lower in the top 10, or maybe even lower than that. So I think that might have been the stretch. But here's the other steal. The other steal was Bol going to the Nuggets in the second round. This was a guy that entering the year was going to be a top 4 or 5 pick, and now he was a second round pick. So if he pans out and he can get over the injury that caused him to miss almost all of his freshman season, his only season at Oregon, if he can get over that and become the player that people expect him to be, then the Nuggets will have completely won this draft by taking him deep in the second round.
So I think that the most interesting answer that Donald gave, and is a topic that I think will probably come up again no matter how his career turns out, is Bol, because he's a player who obviously has an NBA pedigree. His dad, Manute Bol, was an NBA All-Star, and he was projected to be one of the best players in this class as of a year ago. Had a injury-filled and maligned season at Oregon, and now gets picked all the way down in the second round. Jason, did you have any additional thoughts on any of Donald's picks or some other steals and reaches of your own?
Well, so first let me get to what Donald said, because the 2 steals that Donald identified were the 2 guys that I was going to say. I love Sekou Doumbouya. I had identified him as someone I hoped the Hawks might take with the number 10 pick. Now, when Cam Reddish was still on the board, I absolutely wanted Cam Reddish, but I think Sekou Doumbouya is he shows a lot of the athleticism and variety of game that a guy like Pascal Siakam shows, and I think that could be a really, really good pick for the Pistons. And then Bol, I can't really explain him lasting to number 44. I've never seen injury fears like this, because let's be clear. So Bol has like legit crazy NBA height. I mean, we're talking about a dude who is, I think he's like 7'2". He's unbelievably tall. And so, you know, he's got NBA height and length. In fact, I think at the combine, he set new records for his length, for his wingspan. They've never measured anyone as big as Bol in the history of the combine. I think I read that. And on the one hand, you'd go, okay, but the NBA doesn't play with big men. Big men don't matter in the NBA anymore. But Bol's a really good outside shooter. So he should, like, the fact that he lasts to 44 says to me that NBA teams don't just think he might get hurt. They're certain he's going to be hurt. They think, most NBA teams think there's no chance that this guy is able to play at all, because if he's able to play, I mean, like, he's unguardable on the perimeter and he can hit 3-point shots and he can protect the rim. I mean, how did that happen? And how did that last number 44? The only explanation is everyone just thinks this guy is like not just injury prone, but will be unable to take the floor, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, at number 44, who cares at 44?
It's the more extreme version of what happened to Harry Giles, right? Harry Giles was the best player in his class a few years ago.
Yeah.
He had, what, 3 knee surgeries before going into the NBA draft. He didn't get to play much his one season at Duke, and teams passed on him, and but he only ended up in the late lottery.
No, he went number 20.
20.
Harry Giles went number 20.
At the end of the lottery, Bol went 44th.
Yeah, well, and by the way,
that's really far away.
Harry Giles has looked very good for Sacramento so far. He looks like he's on a course to be a significant player for them. If you could get a player like that at number 44, you'd be doing cartwheels if you're an NBA team. So let me really quick. So we already mentioned the 2 guys I think were steals. The other one is, I'm not going to be a Duke homer. I'm going to be honest. Nasir Little at number 25. That's like insane to me that he lasted that long. The idea that Nasir Little was taken after Ty Jerome, the idea that Nasir Little was taken after Grant Williams, like, I can't even wrap my head around that, because the NBA draft is so much about potential, and Nasir Little still has a tremendous amount of potential. There were games this year for Carolina where we saw him absolutely take over. You saw him score in ways NBA players dream about scoring. And the dude he's a physical specimen. He has off the charts athleticism, and he's not like he's unskilled. I don't know what Roy Williams was going around telling NBA teams about him. I think Roy must have been saying bad things or something for him to last to number 25. It's crazy to me that Nasir Little didn't go in the lottery. But I think the Trailblazers got an absolute steal there. And number 25, if it doesn't work out, it's not like the 25th pick. You were expecting him to be great, but Nasir Little has a chance to be great. So that's a great pick, I think.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he lasted that long as well, because usually, right, if you are, it's not like he was injured. With Bol, you could say, all right, I'm an NBA team. I'm picking, towards the end of the first round. So I've already got a playoff team, and I want to keep things going. Bol seems like he might be a project. I'm just going to round down my expectation for him and say he's probably not going to be productive, because the injuries are just going to be too much for him to overcome. Nasir Little didn't have that. Nasir Little is like the perfect kind of player that you want to pick if you are like a good, not great team, because he could flip the switch and be amazing again, be the player that was projected to be, a top 2, top 3 pick as of a year ago. And all of a sudden you've got an extra borderline all-star on your team. So that part was, that's really astounding to me. One guy I wanted to highlight that is interesting to us, sort of looking from the lens of Duke fans. You'll recall last year, Duke lost a game at St. John's to Shamori Pons primarily, and Shamori Pons didn't get drafted in this draft. He came back for an extra season because for whatever reason, he came back, didn't go didn't get drafted, had to get picked up as an undrafted free agent. And I'm always curious about these guys that have these big flashes against a team like Duke or another big program where they're the kind of guys that are going to step up in the moment. And Shamori Pons apparently didn't have the rest of that profile to get drafted, but wouldn't be surprised if he became a real player in the NBA. So that was an interesting one to me. Did you have, Jason, a guy that you were concerned a team reached too much for?
Well, I'm now going to put on my Carolina hating hat again. How do you pick Cam Johnson, number 11? I guess Phoenix just decided they had to have a great shooter, but I don't understand how you pick Cameron Johnson, number 11. I'm not sure he's going to get his shot off really well in the NBA. I don't think he can. I don't think he's going to defend opposing shooting guards all that well. I'm really surprised that if you're that hung up on a shooter, if you're like, we've got to have a great shooter, there are other guys that you could have taken further back in the draft. Carson Edwards, who was the best shooter in college basketball last year, who absolutely lit up the NCAA tournament, went number 33. I don't get Cam Johnson at number 11.
Yeah, I think the one that I'm looking at, and again, this is with my fan glasses on, the Wizards selecting Rui Hachimura with the 9th pick, a player who comes with all kinds of attention because he's the first Japanese player to get drafted in the first round, and the Wizards, who are a team that, according to reports, did not work out Rui Hachimura prior to the draft, so he didn't really know them. That was an interesting pick for me. I am very curious to see how he handles all of that. And the Wizards are going through this big transition right now. They still don't even have a general manager, so it's not like there's really a plan around what's going on with that franchise, right?
There may be no franchise in the NBA that looks more dead in the water for the next 3 or 4 years than the Washington Wizards because of the John Wall contract. They are the worst of all worlds. They don't have the talent to be good, but they're paying too much money to guys, especially guys who are injured, to be able to get new talent. So the reason I think the Rui Hachimura pick is such a bad pick for them is that he's a junior. He's an old guy by the NBA draft standards. If you're the Wizards, you should have drafted a young dude, because if it takes 3 years for him to be any good, what do you care? Because you're going to suck for the next 3 years anyway. So why are you drafting an older guy who's already sort of, Hachimura is sort of the guy that you'd go, oh, this is the guy who can maybe help me right away.
Well, he'll fill in as the 7th or 8th best player on my team that is already in the playoffs.
Exactly. And it doesn't make any sense. That to me, for the Wizards, that makes no sense whatsoever. If I'm the Wizards, I'm drafting someone who's going to be awful, who I can be awful alongside, and hopefully start to get some other good draft picks and make things better that way. The Wizards should have taken Sekou Doumbouya. That's what I think they should have done.
Jason, if you're looking, the Wizards are still out there trying to hire a GM. So I think they would be very interested in your opinions on this matter. And you could go live in Washington. You could hang out with my parents. Consider it.
My sister and my sister-in-law both live in Washington. It's a fine city. Wizards, if you want me, you can find my number.
Yeah, you can find him by DMing him on the Duke Basketball Report forum. He is I think it's just at Jason Evans, right?
What, you mean Twitter?
On the forum. No, the forum.
Jason Duke Evans.
Jason Duke Evans. Okay.
Oh, no,
Jason,
wait. No, on the forum, I'm just Jason Evans. Right.
I think you're just Jason Evans.
Right.
Yeah, yes. You're famous enough to just be that guy. So, yeah. So slide into his PMs on the DBR forum. Don't forget to check out the DBR forum, by the way, where tons of great draft analysis goes on. Okay, we're going to get to one of the most important topics of the draft, of course, a topic that we all feel passionately about. And of course, Donald feels passionately about. That, of course, is fashion. Donald, take it away.
Okay, if we're gonna start with fashion, I'm gonna make a correction. When I said that the steal of the draft was probably Sekou Doumbouya, no, the steal of the draft was Ja Morant's dad in that hat stealing the show last night when he was drafted and they had that interview. Like, my God, that dude was wavy as all can be. I'm telling you, that man was fully dressed to the nines. That man won the fashion show and stole the show at the draft. I was cracking up when I saw pictures of his hat, and he's already become a meme on the internet. It's hilarious what he was wearing, but it was stylish. My man was ready to go. He knew he was going to be on international TV, so that was fun to see. Getting back to the players, I really liked Zion. Zion went with the full all white. He went with all white joint, and I liked it. It looked like it was very comfortable. He wasn't wearing a tie. A lot of people were probably, faux pawing that, but I don't. Like, my man was stylish and he was ready to go. He knew he was going to be the number one pick. So I really like that part. And we're looking at RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett's pink coat. Look, guys, I love pink. I love it. So RJ did a right thing by dressing in pink. He had an outfit going. He had the shoes going, the crocodiles. My man was ready to go. So I'm really looking at those two, and Ja Morant's dad was the man. Also, I thought it was a really cool touch to see Cam Reddish's jacket. He had a tribute to Debbie Jones, who is Trey and Tyus's mom, as she was battling cancer. So I thought that was a really nice tribute to her and to a teammate. I thought that was really cool to kind of shout her out on a night that's supposed to be about him. He made it about somebody else, and I think that's always good to see. And I think a lot of people should take credit, take pride in that Cam did that. I thought that was pretty cool. And finally, if we're talking about tributes, Bol Bol's jacket with the tribute to his late father, Manute Bol, on the inside of his coat. Loved Manute Bol when he was a player, when he was alive. That is obviously somebody he was looking up to still today, and really to shout him out, I thought was a really cool deal.
I can't believe that Donald talked about Bol Bol's jacket and he didn't mention the spider web on the jacket. He talked about what was inside the jacket. Donald, there was a giant spider web on Bol Bol's jacket. Oh my God, that was crazy. And did you see Tyler Hero? Tyler Hero's outfit, I truly, honestly believe, I think it's really sweet. It is very nice that Tyler Hero let his grandmother take the curtains from her living room, the curtains that have been in her family for 93 years, and construct Tyler Hero's suit out of his grandmother's curtains. I think that was really sweet of him.
Man, Jason, you are a cruel human. Yeah, did
you see Tyler Hero's outfit?
No, I didn't. Maybe here, you keep talking.
Oh my God! Wait a second. You have to look up Tyler Hero's suit. Wow! It was just like, it's. In fact, so folks, go out there, type into Google. You know how Google autofills things for you? If you type in Tyler Hero, one of the autofills will be Tyler Hero suit draft. Like, people are so desperate to find out about his suit. It was bad. It was just it looked like grandma's curtains.
I kind of like it.
Oh, really?
I think I like it. Dude. You got to make a statement. Yeah.
What was
I think I'm
statement?
fine with it.
I like purple flowers.
I don't know what his statement is, but he's unique. The people will talk about him. Yeah, you know what? Now I'm seeing it with the pants.
Yeah. It's not just the jacket. Hey, if it was just the jacket, if it was black shirt, black pants, and that jacket, it'd be kind of cool. The pants are killing it. The pants are just no.
What do you think about Zion Williamson going no tie, like chest out?
Oh no, he looked sharp.
Yeah,
I thought Zion looked sharp. His suit I thought looked really good, and I he looked casual. He looked relaxed. He was like, I am here. This is my draft, and I am here. And while we're talking about the Duke guys, I loved. People were liking RJ's pink jacket. That was sharp. I thought RJ looked really sharp. Also, maybe I'm being a homer, but I thought Zion and RJ looked good. Looked really good.
I think fashion becoming a staple of the NBA is an awesome thing, and I'm glad that they all get dressed up like this. And send all your hot takes about us focusing too much on fashion at the NBA draft or in sports in general. I think it's a lot of fun. I think that it's cool that some of these players, if they come from tough backgrounds. I don't know if any of the Duke guys do, but for some of the players who come from tough backgrounds, this is the first time they're going to have access to a lot of money in their life, and they get to go spend it on cool stuff like fun clothing. And it's fun. If nothing else, it's fun to watch. So I am down for that. Let's wrap up our draft coverage. Jason, give me your kind of quick take on Marquise Bolden, because as I mentioned at the top, the last time we spoke, he was still unclear if he was coming back or not. Obviously, the front court for Duke next season is going to be pretty crowded. So I would guess that most of his calculus was not as much on his own projection as an NBA player, but more about just where's he going to get the most actual game minutes this season. And it's probably, even if it's in the G League or it's in the NBA, either way, it's probably more than he was going to get at Duke. But what do you think about Marquise Bolden's pro prospects looking ahead to next season?
Well, it wasn't a shock that he went undrafted, and I think it's very telling and very interesting. His signing was announced by the Cleveland Cavaliers literally within like a half hour of the draft ending. Like, it is clear that the player number 60 name was called, and the Cavs immediately called Marquise's agent and said, "Hey, let's make a deal." Now, I'm not going to be so silly as to say that this deal is for any guaranteed money. They clearly want to see what he does in the summer leagues, but I think it means that they are high on him, as high as you can be on an undrafted free agent, which is not that high. But it means that they definitely are going to take a hard look at him, and he'll get a chance on that summer league team. And, things work out for him. I sort of feel like a G League, a two-way contract is about the best he can hope for. But I think there's a decent chance he's going to get one, because it's clear that they were very interested in him.
Yeah. And that's actually pretty telling, because the teams will line this stuff up ahead of time, right? They can't actually make deals with the players, but
Right.
They can tell them, look, if you're not getting drafted, and you're probably not, everyone knows you're not getting drafted, we are coming for you immediately. And we've talked before about how,
and I think
teams now.
By the way, I think Bolden had that word from the Cavs and maybe some other teams, which is why he stayed in the draft. He knew that he wasn't going to have to wait around for a call. That if he didn't get drafted, teams are going to call right away.
And teams are, nowadays where teams have a lot more data, they are able to scout players in more sophisticated ways. It also means that they're going to come to more diverse opinions about about projections about certain players. So all you really need is for a couple teams to think, you know what, he's not a player that we need to draft because the other teams aren't looking at him, but he is a player that we're interested in. So the draft is a big game in teams indicating what their preferences are, and telling the reporters, and the reporters announcing, oh, so-and-so has interest from all these teams. So-and-so is definitely getting drafted in the first round. All of that is all gamesmanship. And then the players actually go out and get or the teams go out and get the players that they want. So I don't know if Marquise Bolden's going to spend a lot of time in the NBA this year, but I am pretty sure that he's going to get more burn against better competition than he probably would have at Duke. And that isn't as much of an indictment on Marquise Bolden as I think it used to be back in the day. I think it's just that Duke has, especially once they added Matthew Hurt, Duke has a really strong front court next year, and Bolden knew that he could have played his way into the starting lineup. He could have also played his way right to the bench. So this way, at least, he's probably going to get a lot of minutes in the G League, and hopefully will have a successful career. This episode of the Duke Basketball Report podcast is brought to you by the boys of Bird Campbell, PA. Duke alums Tucker Bird and Jamie Campbell have been running this law firm in Texas and in Florida for many years. For all of your business legal needs, contact Bird Campbell at birdcampbell.com. That's BYRDCAMPBELL.com. Bird Campbell means business. All right, we are going to wrap it there. We don't obviously have players of the week because there was no basketball to analyze, and the NBA Finals was sufficiently long ago enough that you have probably consumed all the content you need on the Raptors' big victory over the Golden State Warriors. But we have to do our parting shots, so I will let Donald start. Donald, tell us about being in Paris and in France for the U.S. women's national team's World Cup appearance for the last few weeks.
Well, first off, Sam, Jason, thank you again for giving me these questions ahead of time so I could pre-record responses and kind of be a part of the show, because it was a very important show. The NBA Draft special that we do every year is always fun to recap, so I'm glad I was able to be a part of it, at least in this format. So thank you guys for facilitating that for me. As mentioned at the top of the show, I am here in Paris, France for the Women's World Cup. I've been here since the 9th of June and will be in France through the end of the tournament, which ends on July 7th. I'm here with the American Outlaws. I am helping to run a travel package that goes throughout the tournament. So I am here for the entire time following our women's national team around. It's been a absolute blast to go to several different places. We had a game here in Paris. We had one in Reims, which is in the Champagne region, for those of you familiar, out in the eastern part of France. And then also in Le Havre, I was there a couple days ago, which is in Normandy. Some of the highlights of this trip, and I'll be brief with it because there's so many I could talk about. The Normandy trip was one of the more rewarding experiences I've ever done. We went to the Normandy American Cemetery. I was able to lay a wreath at the memorial there in the cemetery and have a ceremony on behalf of all of the 25,000 members of my organization. So that was a very unique thing to do and a tremendous honor, really. It was a humbling experience to be in Normandy and kind of see something very unlike any other cemetery in the world. Also, just being at the games, the marches through the towns in Paris, we took over, literally, we shut down streets. The Paris police shut down an entire major intersection for us and guided us through the streets of France as we had a march of about 5,000 people to the stadium. All the stadiums have been fantastic. All the people have been fantastic. And just being here in the Bastille region, or the Bastille neighborhood of Paris, I should say, has been awesome to be for the last couple of weeks. I'll be here for a week longer, and then I'm off to Lyon, which hosts the semifinal and final, which I was there last year for the men when they played a friendly against France before the France men went on to win their World Cup last summer. So it'd be great to get back there, and hopefully this time I will get to watch our women's national team hoist their fourth major trophy, or fourth World Cup trophy. So thank you guys. If you guys are out there, you can follow me on Twitter at BlazingDW. You can follow the American Outlaws at American Outlaws on Twitter. We're providing all the content for that on that side of things. If you're into that, and especially I've seen some Duke people here too, which is great. A lot of Duke people made the trip last week to Paris, and some are coming back for the quarterfinal should we face France here in Paris next Friday. So with that, I will not bore you anymore with the soccer, but it has been an absolute thrill. If you're in France at one of the games, come find me, say hi. Otherwise, look for me on TV. There's a lot of media coverage out there, and we are at the center of it all. So thank you guys for letting me do this, and to Jason, Sam, again, thanks for letting me facilitate this from afar while you guys sleep, so that when you wake up, you have something to record.
Can I just say I'm so jealous of Donald having the kind of life that he's able to do this. It's just really cool, and he's having a great time. And by the way, he didn't mention it. Dude is all over the media. Like, he was on CNN International the other day. He was interviewed on some big time podcast. Donald is he is representing the U.S. fans over there in Paris beautifully. All
right, Jason, what have you got for us?
So, folks, get out a pen and a piece of paper. I'm going to give you some stats. I am all about the statistics, and because this podcast has been all about the draft, I'm all about stats about the draft. Duke has now broken a tie. It's a tie we were in with Kentucky for the most number one overall picks in the NBA draft. Duke has now had 4 guys drafted with the number one overall pick. It breaks a tie we had with Kentucky. They had 3. We now have 4. Hey, Sam, can you name all 4 of them?
All 4 Duke number one picks?
Yes.
So we've got Zion Williamson. Yes. We've got Kyrie Irving.
Yes.
We've got Elton Brand.
Yes.
And we have Art Heyman.
You are good. Nicely done, sir.
It's
Nicely
almost
done.
like I talk about Duke basketball on the internet.
Yes. So that's one stat.
Or I read it this week.
That's one stat. Here's another good one for you. Duke has now had a player selected in the top 3 in the NBA draft in 6 consecutive years. That's the longest streak of all time. The only other program that comes close is UCLA. Had that for 4 consecutive years back in the 1970s. 6 straight years with a top 3 draft pick. That's crazy. That's just silly. Coach K has had now 41 first-round draft picks by Coach K. That's the most of any coach, any college coach in history. Number 2 is John Calipari with 35, and then Roy Williams with 30. But Coach K's 41 is the most ever. And Duke has now produced 28 lottery picks. That's the most ever by any college program. Kentucky has 26, North Carolina has 20, but Duke has 28. So those were just some of the numbers, some of the stats I wanted to give you of how Duke has just owned the NBA draft for the past, 30 plus years since a certain guy named Krzyzewski stepped foot on campus.
Jason, those were some pretty cool stats. Thank you, of course, as always, for bringing the numbers and the heat to the show. I am going to wrap up today by telling you about a visit that I made this weekend. So I mentioned before that I am in Seattle for the summer. I have some classmates who are doing summer internships at Nike down in Beaverton, Oregon. And I was down there this weekend to visit some of them. And because they are Nike employees, they have access to the Nike employee apparel store. So I was in there yesterday, Sunday. Sports fans, let me tell you, it is awesome going to the Nike employee store. Unfortunately, no Duke apparel. They do have some limited Carolina apparel that's all Jordan brand. So that was a bummer. But I did get 3 pairs of shoes that are pretty dope. So I got a pair of I don't even know what they're called, but I got 3 pairs of shoes. They were awesome. And you should all have friends that work at Nike, because or you should just go work at Nike. It seems like a pretty cool place. So that was a lot of fun. I'm having a good time out here for the summer. We might do another show, I guess, while I'm still out here, but we'll be back to school before you know it. So I'll be back on campus to be, reporting live from the scene of the crimes that will be happening next year. Or hopefully there will be no crimes, but you understand the expression, right? So
Absolutely.
So with that, I think we will wrap it up. Thanks again to Donald for calling in from overseas and pre-recording his answers for us. That was a lot of fun, and of course, good luck to the U.S. women's team, who I believe are headed into the semifinals or the finals now. I can't say that I keep up with it the same way that Donald does, but good luck to the U.S. women who are advancing right along in the World Cup. Jason Evans, of course, was here. Bird Campbell was sponsoring as always. And finally, I remain Sam Klein, coming to you from Seattle, Washington. This has been Duke Basketball Report podcast episode 162. Duke Band, take us home.